I checked our mobile phone account and discovered that since late summer, they've been exchanging hundreds of texts a day, peaking at nearly 500 a day by the holidays. Welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today, going to go over a story titled, Cheat on Me with My Best Friend, I'll Wreck Your Career and Publicly Humiliate Both of You. And guys, this story is about a guy, he's married, and he's going to share his story about how his wife and him, as well as the neighbors across the street, had been best friends for years, going on vacations together, barbecues, kids hang out, the whole 9 yards. But eventually he discovers that, guess what, his wife is having a full-blown affair with that guy, with the neighbors, with the husband. And you're going to see, guys, how this whole thing goes down and the justification and BS that his wife makes for this whole thing. But ultimately, this guy, as hurt as he was and it was terrible, this guy definitely has the last laugh and definitely gets even with both these people. Not just her, the wife, but also the a-hole that was doing his wife. Great revenge story here. So, getting started, it says here, and he changed the names here. And you're going to see real quick why. He says, Shithead and Sarah have been like family to my wife and I for several years. Practically ever since we moved across the street from them. Shithead's obviously the guy. The four of us were extremely tight. Our kids are the same age as theirs and are all good friends. We're one big family unit. We did dinner together a few times a week. We went on vacations together. I truly saw Shithead as my brother. And my wife and Sarah were very close too. Well, they were all a lot more close than this guy realized at the time. 5 months ago, I was completely blindsided by the discovery of an affair between my wife and Shithead. My wife had left her email open on the computer, and I saw an email from her to her longtime therapist saying that Shithead would be joining her in an upcoming session. Again. What the fuck? My mind started racing. Why in the world would Shithead be going to her therapy sessions without my knowledge? I did a search and found some other emails to and from the therapist providing that Shithead had been going to sessions together with her for about 6 weeks. So this guy he considered to be a really good friend. They hung out all the time. They're going to therapy together? You got to be kidding me. Amongst many other things he's discovering, we'll discover. He says, I checked our mobile phone account and discovered that since late summer, they've been exchanging hundreds of texts a day, peaking at nearly 500 a day by the holidays. 500 texts a day? What the hell could you possibly be talking about with 500 texts a day? Speaking of the holidays, my wife and I hosted both of our families, parents and siblings, etc., for both Thanksgiving and Christmas. And Shithead and Sarah joined us each for dinner or after dinner for both holidays. Text records show that the entire time they were at our house celebrating with our families, my wife and Shithead were texting each other across the room. They were doing that pretty much every time the four of us hung out for months. And all day, every day, just in general. But what bothers me the most is that they were doing it while Sarah and I were right there. Right there. If someone's not happy in their marriage, okay, fine. End it. Don't do this bullshit. But that's okay. Well, it's not okay. Let me rephrase that. But karma's going to come back to bite them in the ass. I confronted my wife with the evidence, and she admitted that yes, she and Shithead had fallen in love. It just happened. I don't know how, but I love him, and I just don't feel anything for you anymore. I'm sorry. It's like there's a book, a handbook that's used with these dumbass lines that these people use when they cheat. It just happened. They had gone on a school district trip together. Something had happened in her hotel room, and things had moved quickly from there. Something happened? Care to elaborate? Not him, but her. She explained as I lay face down on the couch, unable to look at her, that they had already made plans to move out and divorce me and Sarah, and while they didn't plan to move in together immediately because of the kids, they'd probably do so eventually. The meetings with the therapist are supposedly to mostly for the purpose of finding a way to break this to me and Sarah as gently as possible, because they were so very concerned for our well-being. Yeah, sure. He says, Sarah and I were fairly certain that they weren't planning on telling us about the affair at all, and were simply going to discover their feelings for one another several months down the line after they'd come up with some other reason to divorce the two of us. My wife moved out 2 months ago. I was and still am utterly destroyed. I cry every day. I cried writing the first paragraphs of the story just now. I worry nonstop about the impact on our kids, but I'm also not exactly a shrinking violet either when I feel that I've been wronged. And in this case, I was objectively very, very wronged. Notice this guy's talking about how he's worried about the impact this will have on the kids. Do you think his wife and shithead, that was a thought in their minds? Hell no. They just wanted to get some and enjoyed sneaking around. So a couple years ago, shithead ran for a Board of Education seat as a pretty extreme underdog. I helped him with his campaign materials and debate prep, and my wife, a well-known school district employee, and this becomes important later, got the word out as best she could. Much to our surprise, he actually won in a squeaker by just a few dozen votes. Being on the board became the center of shithead's world. He joined every committee that he could. This turned into the foundation of his affair with my wife, as they were constantly going to school events and meetings together on evenings and weekends. No good deed goes unpunished. He's helping this guy get to where he wants to be. He gets there, he gets that position, and now he's all at these committees, and his wife is obviously in the education, and now they're all there together, and look what happens. Once I discovered the affair, my thoughts turned pretty quickly to revenge, and it occurred to me that the extramarital affair between a member of the Board of Education and an employee of the school district was at least bad politics and possibly violated district policy. Making things far worse for them was that my wife was in the running for an open administrative position, and everyone knew that she was more or less guaranteed the job and the major pay raise that came along with it. She had just finished her master's degree in school administration at the urging of her principal and the superintendent, so that she could be promoted to this specific position. Yeah, well, not for long. I have plenty of evidence of the affair. Texts from both of them admitting to it, text records showing that they were texting hundreds of times a day, emails to and from the therapist, etc. I considered simply emailing all the evidence to the board and the superintendent, but felt like I felt like I, as the grieving betrayed spouse, might not be seen as a credible source. So instead, I invented a fictitious, furious friend who was planning on showing up to the next board meeting and publicly shaming the two of them for their affair. I told my wife that I tried to talk this person down, but couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't show up and humiliate them publicly. As I expected, this led the shithead to conclude that the only option for him was to preemptively admit the affair to the board. Suckers. The superintendent subsequently recommended that shithead resign, which he did. Sarah said that he was utterly humiliated and crushed, and barely got out of bed for the first few days afterwards. That's what you get, you piece of crap. Awesome. And the dumbass believed this and did it himself. Once word of the affair and shithead's resignation started getting around, the superintendent, a longtime friend of both my wife and shithead, contacted my wife and tearfully informed her, wait for it, that it was no longer politically appropriate for her to be promoted to an administrative position within the district. The position that had been lined up for her was later filled by an outside candidate. This sent waves of confusion and rumor throughout the district, and it was pretty known that my wife wasn't getting the job, or that she was getting the job, but not anymore. The day after she was informed that she wasn't getting the promotion, my wife and I, despite our crumbling marriage, took our son out to breakfast together on his birthday, and a parent stopped by our table to congratulate her on her new role. She said thanks, then excused herself to go cry in the bathroom for a while. Oh, boo-hoo. This is what she gets. Could have been way worse. Not getting that promotion, and wait till you see what also happens. I let the dust settle for a couple weeks, and then right before my wife moved out, let them in on my little secret. There was never a furious friend threatening to expose them in the first place, just me. I disagree with that move, because now they know you did it, and now they can find a way to get even with you, when before they may have been questionable how that information got out there. Now they know you did it. That may have felt good for 5 minutes, but then now she could come back and make things difficult with the divorce or with the kids or something, and they just try to find a way to get even with you, even though, nobody can blame you. Words of all this had gotten around our fairly small town, which shithead grew up in, and my wife had worked for nearly 20 years. Yeah, well, in small towns, gossip can travel very, very quickly. I grew up in a small town. It's unbelievable how fast good gossip can get around. My wife refuses to talk to me about how things are at work now, but I've heard from some people I know in the district that her formerly spotless reputation has taken a major hit. Shithead, formerly a gregarious social presence in our neighborhood and at events and pubs in town, has completely gone underground and barely emerges to mow his lawn. He's moving out soon to a shitty little townhouse which he can afford due to all the child support he's going to have to pay his wife. Ha! As you guys know, those of you who follow me in my other channel, Strong Successful Male, I'm not a big fan of dudes having to pay ridiculous amounts of alimony and child support, because a lot of times that child support isn't for the kids, it's for the wife to use on her new clothes and new shoes. But in this situation, he deserves it. My wife and Shid claim that they've been planning on trying to make things work together despite all the public humiliation. I wish them lots of luck with that. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun to show their faces together in town. And now he provides some answers to a lot of questions people had in this whole situation, so I'm going to read them anyway. He says here, are you and Sarah a thing now? You should totally be a thing. That would be awesome. And he says, no, we're friends. We've been incredibly important to each other since this all started and have certainly gotten a lot closer, but not in the way everyone's thinking. This would all be so much harder to deal with if I didn't have her to lean on. And she says she feels the same way about me. We're going through this basically the exact same situation with the same players after all. Shid hasn't moved out yet. Once he does, we plan on going back to getting the kids together more often like they used to. It'll never be the same, of course. She always does. She already does come over with the kids from time to time, but it's just tough with Shithead's constant presence across the street. I don't know how she hasn't kicked that jackass out. That's what I'm puzzled about. Another question was, doesn't your revenge hurt both set of kids? He says, not really. Shithead has a day job. The Board of Education was his hobby and his passion, but he didn't affect his income at all. And my wife has been assured that if she wants to pursue an administrative position with another district, she'll have glowing letters of recommendation from her superintendent and principal. Yeah, glowing letters as long as she doesn't work there. It'll mean giving up a lot of work relationships in the process, but giving the hit her reputation has taken, I'm guessing she makes that jump sooner rather than later. In the meantime, not moving to an administrative job means that she has summers off with the kids. Another question, why do you call her your wife instead of your former wife? He says, we're working out through the divorce and mediation, but it isn't final yet, will soon be. And another question, the final one says, why didn't you notice all the texting your wife was doing? He says, well, I did. I was really starting to piss me off. It was excessive. She had a big social circle and does tend to text a lot anyway, but it was really getting over the top, to the point where she was completely ignoring me and the kids. At one point in November, I asked her to agree to a no phones at the dinner table rule, which she agreed to reluctantly, but then would pout through dinner, and eventually she just started using her phone during dinner again. If you can't make it through dinner without checking your phone, actually pouting, that says something about you. And what does that say to the kids nowadays? Kids nowadays can never put their phones down for a second. And this is a situation, the kids observe the parents doing this. Now, and I know people like this, I assume, are not having affairs, but they can't put the damn things down. They can't watch a movie or TV show without being on their phone. I get if something important is coming, like a message, someone's in the hospital or whatever, but just because they got to see what the latest thing is on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, it's ridiculous. He said, all that said, I was not blind. Not only was the texting getting weird, but her relationship with Shithead was starting to make me uncomfortable. Sarah noticed it too and agreed. We confronted them a couple of times about it directly, and they swore up and down that it was just school stuff that they were talking about, but nothing else was going on. Well, you'll learn that was a steaming pile of crap. And for whatever reason, we believed them. Probably because the mind tends to refuse to see things that it doesn't want to see. Very true. He ends it saying, thanks, by the way, for all the support in the comments. I couldn't reply to everyone, but I did read them all, and I appreciate them. Even the brutal, honest feedback from people who feel like I did the wrong thing. He didn't do the wrong thing. He shouldn't have told it was them. It was him that revealed it. That's what he did wrong. Posting this and reading all the responses introduced me to perspectives I hadn't considered about all this, and remind me, most of all, that the anguish I'm dealing with is pretty normal given the situation I'm going through. I had a pretty okay Memorial Day weekend, even though I missed my wife and thought a lot about things that we'd probably be doing as a family. I'm talking to my kids, taking my kids camping next weekend and having something like that to look forward to, and plan has me feeling pretty good today. So, posting this online, getting some feedback, everything definitely helped that guy out. It's amazing how that works. But I wish this guy the best of luck, and that sucks that it happened, but goes to show you got to pay attention to the red flags. But it's nice to see a situation that is obviously really bad to him and his neighbor, the woman, but these two a-holes get it in the end. It didn't like magically just happen. He had a hand in making this thing happen, but good for him. They deserved it. So be curious to see if those two actually end up together now that the little life that they wanted is now gone. So, all right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. I know what you think about this. And, guys, you come across a really good crazy story like me to share, or something just really interesting that would work for this channel, email me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. And if you haven't checked my main channel, check it out, Strong Successful Male. Obviously a men's channel. Talks about, I do a lot of articles, crazy stories like this, but mostly stories that people write in and tell me about their lives and things they've experienced and gone through. I think a lot of you guys that don't follow me there already will enjoy. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.